Day 1 on board of the Stavagerfjord ferry, and today we're sailing from Bergen in Norway to Hirtshals in Denmark, where we'll be arriving tomorrow morning, and we have a stop in between in Stavanger in Norway as well. And you can see our route today here on the map. But we start somewhere else. We start in Bergen in the Hotel Norge, where I arrived in the last video. There I already showed you my hotel room, and now it was time for the comprehensive breakfast. But comprehensive is not even the right word. It was just amazing. It was by far the best and biggest breakfast buffet I've ever seen in my life. It was absolutely amazing. They had everything that you can imagine. It was just astonishing how big and amazing this breakfast buffet was. So I was very impressed, and the hotel in general was just beautiful, as you can see it here. So if you're in Bergen, I can really recommend Hotel Norge. I really enjoyed my stay there, and the breakfast is out of this world. But then it was time to say goodbye to my hotel, and I headed to the port. And in Bergen that's quite easy because you can just simply walk there. It's like a 20 minutes walk from city center to the port. In case you've been traveling with Hurtigruten before, it's the same terminal that Hurtigruten uses for its Coastal Express. After a check-in, which was done at the manned desk, but check-in machines have already been installed, so they should be in service by now. It was time to go to the waiting area, which is very comfortable, and then it was time to step aboard. As I already said in my ship tour video, the last video, the ferry was, I think, fully booked during my cruise. But first, let's take a look at my cabin. I booked the cheapest cabin category that's available, which is a standard inside cabin, and as you can see, it is pretty standard. It has two lower beds, one of them a sofa bed, the other one a folding bed, a small table next to the beds, and two power sockets. And then there are two more bunk beds at the top, so you could sleep with up to 4 people in this cabin. And here we have a small desk with another 2 power sockets, and that's already it for the cabin. Now we can also take a look in the bathroom, which is a pretty standard bathroom for ferries or also older cruise ships. And here you can see how it looks when you fold the bed down, and that's about it. As I said, this is the cheapest category. There are also much nicer and more luxurious cabins. On this standard cabins, there's no TV in the cabin. And soon after I stepped on board, it was already time to leave the port. The ship has a very short stay in the port. It was impressive how fast they changed all the passengers and the cars. Way sooner than I was expecting it. We were already departing and leaving Bergen. There were also some cruise ships in port. Right next to us was a very big one, the Enchanted Princess of Princess Cruises. And on the other side of the city there's another cruise terminal close to the historic center of Bergen. There was a ship of TUI cruises, I think it was the Mein Schiff 3, and the Otto Sverdrup of Hurtigruten. As you may know, the Otto Sverdrup is not sailing on the Coastal Express anymore. It is an expedition cruise ship, so it was not docked at the Hurtigruten terminal but the cruise terminal. Here you can see the TUI ship, and also right next to it the Otto Sverdrup. And I was expecting that we're leaving Bergen and then going on the fastest way to the open seas, but instead we took the scenic route going all the way to Stavanger, in between of the islands and fjords of Norway. So that was very impressive, and it started to be impressive immediately after leaving Bergen with the passing of the Askøy Brua, the first big bridge that we're gonna pass, and just a few minutes later there was already the next one, the Sotrabrua. This was nothing too special because all the ships that are going south from Bergen needs to pass under these two bridges, as there is no other way out without making a huge detour. But soon after the second bridge there would be a possibility to go to the high seas, but we just stayed within the islands on the coast. And here we are now getting to the Sotrabrua, the second big bridge that we're gonna see today. And after that we got pretty close to the airport of Bergen, which is situated pretty far away from the city itself, but nowadays it's easy to reach because there's a tram line connecting the airport with the city center. The airport of Bergen would have also been the easiest way for me to travel back home for me, but I decided that it would be rather boring to just fly home, and so I chose the Fjord Line to go to Denmark and go home from there. I thought that this would be the more interesting way of traveling home, and with this amazing route that we took, it was absolutely the perfect decision to take the ferry instead of the plane. Even though, of course, it takes much longer, but whenever I have the time, I will always prefer the ferry over the plane because you can see much more of the country. And as always, I will not talk throughout the whole video, just when there's something to explain. Of course, there will be a comment, but I will not comment all the way through this video. Here we are now approaching the airport of Bergen. There you could even do some plane watching from the ship. We saw several Boeing 737s from Norwegian landing in Bergen. Here you can see one. And shortly after the airport there would have been the possibility to leave the coastal waters and go to the high seas, but we stayed within the coastal waters, going past all the islands of Norway's coast, which was a nice surprise because if you check the ferry route that is marked in Google Earth, you will see that there the ferry is supposed to leave the coastal waters right after the airport and going to Stavanger all the way on the high seas, but we were lucky and we took the scenic route. And we were passing a lot of other ferries on our way, smaller ferries, and this is because of the geographic situation of Norway with all the islands and fjords. Of course you need a lot of ferries. Even the biggest highways still need ferries in between, so if you want to drive from Stavanger to Bergen by car, it will take a while because you need to take multiple ferries on your way. And also if you're driving, of course you're not driving straight way because you need to follow the fjords and the mountains, and therefore it's also useful to take the Fjord Line ferry from Stavanger to Bergen because you can save a lot of time with it, and it's way easier for you to just park your car on the ferry, enjoy few hours of scenic cruising through the Norwegian landscape and then arriving in Bergen or Stavanger. And here we are now in the city of Leirvik, and here we can see a big shipyard. It's called Kverna, and they are specialized in building oil platforms and platforms that are treating petroleum or natural gas. And right next to it is another yard, but this is a ship breaking yard, and there they are currently dismantling an oil rig. And after Leirvik we're heading towards the high seas, but shortly before arriving there we turn again left, and then we are heading to Haugesund. And in Haugesund, there we have the most spectacular part of our cruise today, because there the waterways get very narrow. Here you can see the city of Haugesund, and there you should be outside, because then we are passing the Karmsundbru, so the Karmsund Bridge, and this is very spectacular as there is not much space left between the ship and the bridge, and also the waterways here are very narrow, and we're still passing this narrow point with a high speed. Here you can see it, it looks like you're on a river cruise ship. There's not much space between the ship and the shore, and this is a very spectacular sight. Of course, there's no reason to be worried. If a cruise ship would pass this narrow point with this speed, I would be slightly worried, but not on board of this ferry, because the captains of the ferries are sailing here every day, so they of course know exactly what they are doing. So there's no need to be worried, and you can just enjoy this amazing landscape. But I would recommend to be outside at this particular part of the cruise. And soon after, there's a short stretch where we're leaving the coastal waters a little bit. We're still close to the coastline, but there are no more islands in between of the ship and the high seas. So there might be some more movements of the ship, which is also the reason I think that the ferry is taking the more scenic route instead going to the high seas, because here are of course less waves as the area is protected by all of these islands. And if you have too much waves, of course you need to go slower, and most probably the schedule is more predictable if you take the coastal route. And here we're now approaching Stavanger. We can already see the first planes heading to the airport of Stavanger. And here in the background you can also see the city of Stavanger, which we are passing because the port in Stavanger is quite far away from the city center, so there's no chance to walk from the port to Stavanger. There you need public transport or a taxi, because it's several kilometers between the city and the port. And what's quite unique about our stop in Stavanger is that the ship will get refueled here. And as you know, the ship is powered by LNG, by liquefied natural gas, and usually it is not allowed to refill a LNG ship when guests are on board, but they have a special permit to do so, and since then they can just refill the ship here in Stavanger where LNG is produced, instead of bringing it to Hirtshals in Denmark with trucks. So of course it's more sustainable to refill the ship here in Stavanger. But this means that half of the sun decks are completely closed, which is obviously due to safety reasons, because sometimes people can be stupid and there's a risk that somebody is smoking when the ship is refilled with LNG, which of course would be a very bad thing. So half of the sun decks on this side where the ship is getting refilled are closed, and they are pretty strict about it. They have a sign out that says if you disobey the barriers, you can leave the ship immediately. And here you can see the terminal where we are now docking backwards. And whilst the ship was docking in Stavanger, I headed to the restaurant Grieg because I pre-booked a dinner there. And as I said, restaurant Grieg does not have any windows, but I didn't even realize that because it's looking so nice and I was not missing the windows. They had a very small crew there. There was only the maître, but he was amazing. He ran the whole restaurant by himself without any problems. He was still taking a lot of time for every table, explaining all the courses in a very friendly and humorous way. So I really enjoyed my time there, and the food was amazing. As you can see, it tasted as amazing as it looked. So if you're traveling with Stavagerfjord or the sister ship Bergensfjord, I highly recommend reserving a table at restaurant Grieg. It was an amazing evening. Here you can see some beef that was cooked for 6 hours at low temperature. It was absolutely stunning. So I highly recommend going to restaurant Grieg. It's an amazing experience. And that's it for this video. And in the next video I will show you day 2 on board. And here you can see when this video will be uploaded and the name of the song. And as always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider to like, subscribe, comment or share the video link, and I hope to see you in the next video.